Well, joining me now is author of The Safety Trap and host of Coursen's Corner, the podcast, Spencer Coursen, to talk all things about this security failure that happened in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th. Spencer, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
All right, so let's start off. I mean, there's a lot to get to here, but let's talk to the Secret Service Director, Kimberly Cheadle. This is kind of the thing it's been memed to death on the internet. This excuse as to why the roof wasn't secured. She said that building in particular has a sloped roof at its highest point. And so, there's a safety factor that would be considered there that we wouldn't want to put somebody up on a sloped roof. And she said, so the decision was made to secure the building from the inside. What is your reaction as a security expert here to that explanation?
Oh, that's a load of BS. The detail, whoever did the site visit had already identified that building as being a high threat, high priority interest. The fact that, I mean, this was a catastrophic failure on just so many levels from the Secret Service, not just from, I mean, one, go look at the White House or the Capitol building in D.C. and look at how pitched that roof is. And then I can point out the hundreds of counter snipers that are in position on those roofs. You and I have also worked numerous events together where we had counter snipers on other roofs. Mm-hmm. So I think she's going to be walking that one back quite a bit and has already done so to this point. This was a colossal failure of the Secret Service on just a numerous amount of levels, not just from a deployment of assets or a marshaling of resources vantage point, but from a inspecting what you expect vantage point. And while I do believe that the agents who were on the ground that day did the absolute best that they possibly could, that is not what the Secret Service standard is. Secret Service standard is the bar is here, and we need to meet that threshold here. The threshold is not, well, it's the last one of the tour and he's only on the ground for 45 minutes. And then he's going to go back to New York for a couple of days. And if you don't need 100 agents, I could really use the other 50 agents or the other 90 agents to go to Chicago or Milwaukee or to help support all of these other protectees that we're responsible for. And when you take the Secret Service as a whole and you make it, and the Secret Service has been, and I hope we will still be, this like very fine vintage wine, but then you kind of pour yourself a glass and then dump a gallon of water into it, you've really diluted the resourcefulness and the effectiveness of that service's capability.
Yeah, and then you have this sort of delay in getting the facts out, and nature abhors a vacuum here. And so, of course, people are starting to fill in their ideas of what happened when, we only have like bits and pieces. And so it starts to get into this dangerous time where people are just trying to figure it out and they want to know answers and they don't have all the facts, exactly like how did he walk up there? Did he bring the ladder? Was the ladder there? Why wasn't the ladder taken down? So, in the build up to this, where you're talking about they've got to prep this site, where do you think the biggest failure was? My biggest question, Spencer, is first of all, how did the roof, the ladder, if it was there and it was a fixed ladder, how does he walk back there and get up there? That's just the biggest question on my mind, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so I think you hit two really important points there. The first being the communication aspect. The Secret Service was not present at the initial press conference. The interview that the director gave was bad to horrible. And I have yet to hear someone from the Secret Service come out and vehemently say, the candidates who are running for office are protected. They have nothing to worry about. We are taking this very seriously. What I am hearing is a lot of passing the buck and shirking responsibility. Oh, this was outside of our protective perimeter. Oh, this was the responsibility of local law enforcement. Now we're hearing yesterday that this shooter showed up to the event an hour before and walked through the magnetometer by himself carrying a rangefinder. That in and of itself should have warranted a field interview, should have warranted. And I'm not saying we bag and tag this guy and throw him into a broom closet and start interrogating him. Be like, hey, man, saw you had a rangefinder. Do you allow shooting around here? Remove that individual's anonymity so that they realize immediately that they are discovered. Because whether or not this guy had been planning this assassination attempt for days, weeks, months, or even hours, when he shows up to that event with a magnetometer and a military-age male, 18 to 45, who showing up alone should automatically behavioral anomaly. Now he's got a rangefinder, behavioral anomaly, right? And then he walks in and says, "Oh, no one seems to care. Oh, look, there's the president. Oh, look, there's the dais, there's the stage. Oh, look, there's a high vantage point that's not at all protected." Leaves, goes to his vehicle, gets the rifle, then walks back in, or not back in, but then walks to that, apparently climbs the ladder by himself. And from what I heard, there were two officers, the report's still coming up, but from what I heard, there were two officers assigned to that shed. It was too hot outside, so they decided to wait inside. Heard the commotion up on the roof, went outside to investigate, saw the people pointing up top. One of them, there's some reports that one was hoisted or that the other climbed up the ladder. Saw the shooter. Shooter turned to engage the officers. Officers, instead of engaging that suspect, chose self-preservation. And then that was the window of opportunity for the shooter to realize that his time was limited, and that's why he engaged his shots, and which hopefully caused him to rush. And President Trump doesn't turn his head half a degree.
Yeah.
We're having a very different conversation right now.
Yeah, we are. And look, I read the quote from the Secret Service director, Kimberly Cheadle. Look, I mean, you have one job, and as you well know, and you ran, like you said, we've worked many events together, and you have one job. It is to protect the principals involved here. And if, even though he survived this attempt, he got clear shots off, multiple shots off, and someone was killed at this event, you failed at your job. Do you see any reason why this person should retain their position?
No. And if anything should be stark and obvious, it's look at the protection detail that President Trump had in Pennsylvania, and look at the detail that surrounded him walking into the RNC. One looked like a bunch of people who had, were DEI hires, and the others looked like they just came out of a training camp from the UFC, right? It was a night and day difference. If you're going to sit here and say that you are taking protection seriously, the RNC is what taking security seriously looks like. And I think the Secret Service agents on the ground that day did the best that they could do. I think they did a really good job of covering the principal once the shots started ringing out, putting themselves over him, putting themselves between the bullet and a target. Where things kind of went off the rails was when you heard them say, "Okay, where are we going? What are we doing? Who's got what?" Like, they did not have a plan. Yeah. They didn't know what to do. And so you start seeing them kind of whimsically stand the president up and where are my shoes? They allowed the principal to dictate his protection rather than them dictating it to him. Watch the event when Reagan got shot. Within 2 seconds, he was off the ground and tossed into the back of the car, and that vehicle was out before everyone really knew what was going on. This was I don't understand why the SUV wasn't backed up to provide another level of protection. I don't understand why they put him into the passenger seat of the car rather than the driver's side, again, using the vehicle as another asset in the protective package. There just seems to be no one knew what to do, no one knew where to go, and no one knew how to get there.
Yeah,
and when your job is to cover and evacuate, that's a very significant thing to take into consideration, because I remember when I was going through my own protective academy, it was like year one, day one, hour one was anytime your protective team needs to pivot from prevention to evacuation, you failed.
Yeah. Yeah. And one more question here, Spencer. Like I said before, you got this vacuum of time here going. And so conspiracy theories are filling the internet. We're still waiting for the facts to come in. And so we don't know what the answers to these questions are yet fully. And we may never know. Hopefully that's not the case. But what is your response to those who say, in one way, shape, or form, insinuate that this is an inside job? I mean, what is your reaction to that when you hear that?
This is not an inside job. It's very fun. But again, this is what happens when you don't have communication, right? When you don't have clear, concise communication, the void is going to backfill with their own interpretation. But as a general rule, I do not prescribe to conspiracy what I can describe as inadequacy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Spencer Coursen, author of The Safety Trap, host of Coursen's Corner podcast. Make sure you're checking that out. I mean, a lot of great tips on protecting yourself, how you can survive crazy situations that, look, the odds of these things happening are low, but it only needs to happen one time. So, Spencer, appreciate the time today, sir.
Thank you, my friend. Cheers.